So welcome back to the Endurance podcast. How have you been, Tim? It's been a while since we last talked.
I'm great now, thanks. It's sunny in Birmingham for a change.
It's a nice change, isn't it?
Yeah.
So today we've got a bit of a guest, someone who I think I probably became more aware of a few years ago when he was riding the British scene, and he won the Rutland Melton Cycle Classic. And I think shortly after a race in Leicester, where I was just past the finish line of, and there was a crash just after the finish line as well. And then he went on to ride for a World Tour team, and he's retired recently. But we're here to talk a little bit about his journey, really, from when he was a young rider right up to being pro, and hopefully some useful lessons that people can learn from it. So happy to introduce Gabs Cullaigh. Welcome, mate.
Cheers, Tom. Nice to join you both.
Great.
Yeah.
So I guess let's start at the start, really. How did you get involved in riding? What was your early sort of career progress like?
Yeah, so I got into cycling. I'd always been into like messing about with on my bike. My parents weren't like avid cyclists. They had bikes and commuted to work. That was it, and they weren't like any sort of athletes themselves. But luckily, where I grew up in Home Firth, in Yorkshire, there's a really good youth network with all the local clubs. So once I started kind of venturing further than the field behind my house, I started enjoying riding more. Thought it'd be cool to join a club and see what that's about. And then just kind of took off. That's slowly took off from there, I guess. But I joined all it was British Cycling, Go Ride, youth racing. As I said, the Yorkshire scene was really strong. Yeah. So I just went and raced, basically just spending time with these new mates I was met through cycling. Raced around Yorkshire, and then got a real taste for it. Decided I must have been 15 at the time, maybe even 14, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I started watching Tour de France, all those type of races, and thought, oh, wow, that looks amazing. I'd love to have a crack at doing that. I just threw myself at it, really. Things started to go well. In like my second year of racing, I was under 16, doing well on national series. I met my best mate now, Joey Walker, and his dad had a youth like cycling team at the time, which was RST racing team, which I'm pretty sure is still going. Yeah. And he like helped us out, like helped us out with a nice bike, like nice kit. Just because like my parents didn't really like, bless them, they ferried me around, but they didn't know what they were doing in terms of like what bikes you needed, what kit you needed. So Chris really took me under his wing and provided us a bit of a like stepping stone to be able to impress the right people for heading into the junior and under 23 ranks. I was also at the same time I was on like the British Cycling Olympic program from under 16, so started doing a lot of track stuff with them, and like racing in Europe. And once I started doing those races in Europe, I was like, yeah, this is it. I love it. Definitely what I want to pursue for a career. I can see it, potentially, being in it for, I don't know, 10, 15, whatever, 20 years. I was just absolutely reveling in it, just loving it. And then when it came to, leaving college, I had a decision to make do I go to uni or do I, pursue this career? And luckily I had the opportunity to join British Cycling's Academy program for under 23 riders, not far from where I live now. It was in Stockport, the houses, training at the velodrome, and then racing under 23 calendar all across the globe. yeah, just kind of went for that. Obviously, I mean, why wouldn't you? So yeah, I went for that and kind of really found my feet. I feel like in junior and youth racing, I was good, but kind of never. I don't know. Kind of, I feel like I'm being probably quite modest. I was probably one of the top level of riders in Britain then, but I still didn't feel like I was really standing out. You know, no like real big results. But when my first year under 23, like really found my feet on the road, like won a big Nations Cup early on. Was up there in another few races with like the British program where we were racing best under 23s in the world. You know, did like Tour of Britain, Tour de l'Avenir, World Championships all in my first year under 23, and that was where I was like, wow, I could really make a career here. So yeah, from there, I like kind of decided I want to focus on the road. Joined a Dutch team, SEG Racing. Did some cool races with them, and then from there I went to Team Wiggins, where again I'd probably say I really kind of came into my own and find my specialty in terms of what style of rider I was, which is where, as you mentioned before, I managed to find that platform to be able to show my talents, and then in front of the right people in terms of trying to step up to World Tour. So yeah, when I was at Wiggins, I won like Rutland, won some good races in Europe as well. And I think the one that got the attention of Team Movistar was a race called Volta ao Inteiro in Portugal, which is a race they used to do. When I did it twice and won 2 stages both years, and yeah, on a parkour that shouldn't really suit me. So yeah,
potential.
yeah, exactly. And then I was performing well in like Tour de Yorkshire, up there at Tour of Britain, on like sprint stages. So yeah, made that jump up to World Tour from there, really. So that's like a brief kind of overview of what my career path looked like. So yeah, I think in terms of what we're talking about today, the weight and stuff has always been a thing on my mind. Always stressed about it, but really became a problem in those years where I was developing. So my first year at 23, I probably wasn't finished growing. So I was like quite light still. I was racing at like 74, 75 kilos, which is a good weight for a cyclist that can sprint. So. Yeah. But then after that, started growing. Like my parents are both thick set, so it was genetic. It wasn't like I was in the gym trying to get massive. So then year on year, just slowly found it harder and harder to really keep the weight down. And by the time I turned pro, it became quite apparent that trying to keep the weight off was going to be a struggle for my whole career, really. So yeah.
So when you started your career, when was like the first time you had a proper coach, and who actually like made you be aware about the body weight, and who was like telling you, okay, this is your ideal body weight and you need to kind of stick to it? How was this?
So my best mate's dad, who I mentioned, Chris, when I was junior and youth, he kind of made me aware of it. But what he wasn't like, you need to weigh yourself every day and check how much you weigh. And it was just like, he was more, which is probably wish I'd have stuck by his words. He's like, you've got to fuel your training, but you've got to be putting the right stuff in your body, and doing it the right way, and not stressing about like weighing everything and weighing your body, you just if you're putting in good stuff and if it's sufficient or not, just off your natural, how hungry you are. So that was kind of, I started thinking about it then. But then when I joined the British Cycling Academy, was when I was first exposed to body fat tests, like I forgot what they're called now. It's been a while since we used, the
calipers.
Calipers, that's it. Yeah. First time used, then got that score. Lived with 8 lads, so we were all like comparing who had the lowest number. That type of thing. They would have check-ins of that basically every month. So that was when I really started to it started to weigh in my mind. But as I said, that first year, under 23, it wasn't such a problem. We were racing so much that and being looked after in terms of what we were being given to eat. It was when we were away, it kind of looked after itself. But when you then, and as I say, I think I'd not properly started growing yet. I think in the years after I really started to develop. So yeah, I'd say that when I was in my under 23 years was when I started to run into that. Right, you got to really focus on. You really got to watch your weight and all that, which obviously you have to do. It's not a bad thing, but that was probably where it started to become a thing that was constantly on my mind and I was stressed about. And I think in those years as well, is when I first started hearing you're really big for a bike rider, shouldn't you have been a rugby player or something like that, or I finished, I do really well in quite hilly races, not in the Alps or anything, but that race I won in Costa La Paix, the peace race in Czech Republic. Czech Republic it was quite a hilly day. It didn't really, on paper, didn't really suit me, but that was when people started saying, "Oh, for a big lad, you actually climb quite well." And then obviously you should take that as a compliment, but then I'm like, "Oh, am I a big lad? Do I need to lose some weight?" That type of thing. So yeah.
So if I to continue the questions.
Yeah, go on.
One of the things, so you have support from the perspective of coaching. So you had a probably cycling coach, but when was the first time when you actually got the support from the nutritionist, and how was working with the nutritionist? Because I guess it's also really important that not just have the coach, it's also nutrition if we are talking about body weight, because this is a nutrition topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in terms of my first kind of hands-on nutritionist, I mean, when I was at British Cycling on the under 23 academy, they were still working with Nigel Mitchell, but he'd send on generic stuff. He wasn't really handling our day-to-days, because he was engaged with more the Olympic track riders, but you'd still see him here and there, and you could chat with him and stuff. But then when I joined Team Wiggins, we worked with a guy called Sam Impey. So you must know him. And and he was the best I worked with in my career, full stop. I did know I was lucky at the time, but those 2 years at Wiggins, he really kind of helped me kind of keep on top of my performance. I said to him, look, that was when I was in a good headspace while I was at Wiggins, in that I accepted that I'm a bigger build, stocky type rider, and I don't want to lose too much power. So we decided to start to aim for a weight which was around 80 kilos, which if you'd have told me that a couple of years before, I'd have been I'd have been distraught. But he kind of helped me realize that, that is quite a natural, it's a healthy weight for you, and it's realistic that you're going to be able to maintain that without losing performance, or without kind of tipping over the edge and then gaining loads of weight. And that's what those 2 years I was really consistent, actually, and the results showed that as well. So Sam was great, and he was never the type to be like, right, I want you to eat 100 grams of this, 200 grams of that at this time. It was it was quite generic, so that you didn't have to think about it too much, which again obviously reduced your stress about it all. So, but he was big on, he really opened to my eyes to how much you need to eat to fuel, even on days where you might be trying to do a bit of a like a low carb type day, even on those days, how to make sure it doesn't have a knock-on effect and that type of thing. He really kind of nailed it for me there, which was good. Which is, it was a stark contrast to what I had at Team Movistar. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know Sam Impey pretty well. He was when at the time when he was with Wiggins, he was a postdoc here in Birmingham. So I learned from him. Yeah. He was my kind of an idol. So nice. He got me into this world of sports nutrition anyway.
Oh, cool.
Working with athletes and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I did some. Really I actually did a couple of tests with him there. Just like, I think we did like a physiological testing. I don't know what it was, but he needed me to do it, so I went along. Did it on the campus there.
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, because I remember those were really great days. And then he left the uni for to work with Mitchelton Scott at that time, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
And Wiggins folded as well. Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's shame.
So, yeah.
Where's he now? I can't remember. I'm not spoken to him.
He's now with British Cycling, actually.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think I'm doing that actually. Yeah.
So yeah, he's doing a really good job. And yeah, one of the things like it keeps coming to my mind, like when working with this professional athlete, is like how many different pieces of advice they get throughout their careers. Like every single team probably has their own like philosophy when it comes to training and nutrition. Like, how did you find this, like these changes and like, in terms of both training and nutrition?
I think I managed it all quite well while I was in my years up till the end of Wiggins. Kind of knew what worked for me, and I would tell my coaches that, and they'd be quite receptive. But then when I joined Team Movistar, I mean, as you would as a neo-pro, I just put my trust in them, and it was all very new to me, very different style of training. I'd come from obviously a bit of a track background in the past, so I was used to doing a lot of track riding training, and then mixing that with a bit of gym, and then obviously some nice long endurance rides, which always seemed to work quite well for me. But then when I joined Movistar, I worked with my first coach there was Pachi Villa, who was good, but his training was quite new for me, like very specific. Like he was very good at trying to make sure you don't overdo it, in terms of finish each day without feeling like you've got a little bit more to give, like really trying to build up a foundation each day rather than cook yourself one day and then be ruin the next. So I really enjoyed working with him, but he quickly became distant as he got like ramped up to like head coach and head of performance really quickly. So he didn't, I mean, rightly so, didn't have much time for little old me as a neo-pro. So I got changed. So yeah, it was one of them. I think in hindsight, I wish I'd have really stuck up for what I knew and what I knew worked for me more, because obviously I'd say that the Spanish and Italians have their traditional way of they know what they think they know what a cyclist needs to be doing to be a professional, and obviously it's now proven that that's all quite it's all quite old-fashioned, I guess it is now. Like you see, you guys must talk about it, how scientific training is nowadays, and you got to think about your altitude and your specific intervals. You don't need to be doing huge hours, that type of thing. But they were like, the Spanish were very much like, how can you live in the UK? It's not hilly enough. You need to be, because you're a bigger rider, you need to be living in the mountains so you can lose more weight naturally. You're spending more time on the climbs, burning more calories. You lose loads of upper body weight. And I wish at the time, I kind of always stuck to, but I never budged on where I was living. I lived in the UK, and I'd do stints in Spain and that when I needed to for racing. But in terms of like over winter, I'd try and stick to staying in the United Kingdom and in Yorkshire, because I knew the roads suited me as a rider really well. Made me quite robust all round because they're so heavy and so undulating. It's definitely not flat. So I did kind of back myself there, but then in terms of like what training you get told to do, who was I? What was a neo-pro? What can they say to some well-established coaches saying, if they give you these massive rides and weird efforts to say, I don't know if that's going to do me any good. It's a hard position to be in, because obviously you want to keep the team happy to be able to try, it's not just results that, you know, you get renewed on it. You got to, you know, please the team and all your coaching and stuff as well, aren't you? So I do wish I'd have kind of taken it all with a pinch of salt and stuck to my guns a little bit, but yeah, it's in hindsight now, I guess. So yeah, I
guess it's tempting as well to kind of give something different a go. You think, well, I've stepped up a level, working with guys who are at this level, and this is what they do. Maybe that's why they're at the higher level, and give that a go, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, where things started to go really wrong was when I started working with a guy called Leonardo Piperly, and I didn't know who he was at the time, but when I did find out who he was, it kind of all made sense. But he was very, very old-fashioned. You know, his training style was huge hours, and then he really, really stressed about my weight. You know, and he'd be like, the whole point of training was to every training blocking that we did was all to do with trying to, you know, shed some extra weight off me. So doing like stupid long rides, only eating protein, you know, like 5-6 hours, go out, you know, pre-breakfast, and then while you're on the ride, only eat protein, but like doing that back to back, and then on rest days, like little sprints to keep like metabolism going, and
not a rest day.
Yeah, exactly. And at first, like when I first started working with him, he'd been working with Cobrelli, Ivan Cortina, my new teammate at the time. So I kind of thought, oh, well, you know, he's worked for them, he must know something. But I quickly realised when I got to racing that I was completely flat, had no power. I was probably the heaviest I felt the most out of shape I've ever raced at, you know, because I'd not been fueling my training properly. You know, I might have been light, but, you know, the kind of quality of kind of like my physiology was not there. I kind of was really coming away from the rider that I naturally was, you know, like natural powerhouse that could, you know, withstand those 1 to 10 minute efforts over and over again. I was, you know, I could only do it 3-4 times and I'd be absolutely goosed. And yeah, kind of, obviously, I think at the time when I was doing that training, that mad stuff, you know, really, you know, like just starving myself, doing long hours, I kind of thought, oh, this is going to do great. I can feel myself burning the fat. I feel myself shredding. I'd lose like 5, sometimes 10 kilos in like a month. And think that's fine, you know, it must be really working. But obviously, you know, looking back, it was really, really detrimental and quite dangerous, actually. So, yeah.
But did you have like some kind of sports nutrition support? What was the coach prescribing you nutrition or?
Yeah, so in the end, they did have a nutritionist, but he'd send stuff over, but it was none of it was like tailored to like each rider. I mean, I don't know how you do it, Tim, at Bora, but what I do is send out like a generic plan. Of like what to eat on what days and stuff, and it was tailored for like a 60 kilo climber. So I'm like looking at it thinking, if I eat that, I'll die. So yeah, and then they just kind of expect you to. I mean, you know, I was a neo pro as well, so you know, maybe I think it's for sure that. You know, like the tour riders, you know, the Grand Tour riders were probably getting much closer help. But, you know, in terms of the rest of it, it was just, I remember me and the other neo pros just like getting this stuff and looking at it and just thinking, you know, what the hell? It's just like it's not enough. So yeah, it was there, but it wasn't sufficient. It wasn't sufficient support really, which was disappointing, you know, I spent all them years dreaming of becoming a world tour rider. Finally joining one of the biggest outfits, longest lasting outfits, you know, in the world of cycling, and then you just kind of, you know, left to your own devices. It was a bit of a hit the ground pretty hard, you know.
Taking a step back almost in terms of that support you're getting and Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you think it's going to bring you on as a rider.
Yeah, definitely. And then it was weird that like when I was with Leo, he would then take over what he like set a nutrition plan as well. And then like really check in on what I've been eating. And then it got to a point where I just had to lie to him because I do like the like fasted rides or whatever, and try for as long as I can stick to it. His program after that, but just led to basically caused a bit of an eating disorder, to be honest. I was like, some days, like on those big days, you burn 6,000 to 8,000 calories, and then you're trying to only put like 5 back in. So then the next day, on like a rest day, be trying to just put in 1,500 calories, and then and then wonder why I was like then cracking and like binge eating later in the day. Obviously, luckily my body would take over and force myself to eat. But at the time, I thought it was like really bad, and just led to all sorts of problems. So it was a pretty rough time, really, compared to my years at Wiggins, where I was fueling well, performing well, felt like great on the bike. It was, it was pretty intense.
Do you have like one crazy ride when you did like with no carbs or something? Like, what would be like the craziest thing you ever did nutrition wise?
So I was in Calpe in start of 2021. I'd gone there for a few weeks before our team camp, and I went and rode with there's a British Conti team staying nearby, so I went and did a ride with them, and I knew it was 7 hours, and I set off, and I'd only had I didn't have breakfast. I set off with whey protein shake in 1 bottle, and then I took like 2 other protein bars, and I just didn't eat the whole way around. Wow. Just had that whey protein shake, and then in the first hour, then stopped, got another bottle of water. I think I had one of the protein bars at like 3 hours, and then for the last 4, we stopped for like a water stop, and I got like a Coke Zero, and then a massive bottle of sparkling water, and just down that and hope I get through. And I just like sat on the back of this group the whole way around, but it was a hilly ride. It wasn't like a easy ride either. I got back, and it's just, I thought I felt all right. I was convincing myself I was fine at the time, but I definitely wasn't. And then I wondered why, I got to like the first races and I was like completely flat, but there you go. That was stupid.
So did Leo set you any kind of efforts as well, or was it purely like
we used to
long city rides, fasted, getting to lose weight?
Yeah, there was some.
You do them if you did.
Yeah, there was some good effort. I say good. They were definitely different to what I'd done before. There was a lot of overgeared work, like low cadence, into like a bit of a sprint, which I think probably had some science behind it. But when you're under fueled, doing that type of training is, I don't know. I didn't ever feel like I was getting much from it, because for that type of effort, you've got to be you should be super carbed up really to get the most out of it. Obviously, even when you're riding low cadence, high torque, you're using a lot of ATP, a lot of, really burning through the carbs there. Yeah. But my carb store was obviously next to zero. So in terms of what I was actually gaining from that, probably wasn't much. So we do like 1 or 2 of them a week. But it was generally, long hours, low, try to keep it low intensity, and very little food to go with it. So, definitely, it was a shame, because I really want, obviously, that working with him was my second year Neo Pro. I wanted to renew. So Movistar signed me to be like one of their classics riders, basically. just never really performed in any of them. I was gutted really. Turn up to the classic season, those 2-3 weeks in Belgium, really excited, obviously the race I had dreams of doing, but I was just a passenger really. So it was a shame that luckily I kind of halfway through my second year, I rang Patchy and said to him, I can't work with Leo anymore. I think it's really detrimental, and if I want to turn my season around, I've got to put my foot down. And maybe doing that was why, was probably the start of, not getting renewed, not playing ball. But I'm kind of glad I did it because, it was a case of taking my own performance into my hands, but also my own health. So I remember a day in Challenge Mallorca, it was in like June because it had been rescheduled because of COVID. The first day was like quite hilly and would normally suit me on a good day quite well, but just got dropped like very early on, and I was like, this is just not me. So it was that day I decided I need to take things into my own hands for the rest of the year, and managed to turn it around. I was going well by the end of the year, but just didn't have no real results came of it, which is the way it goes sometimes. So
too late.
I was healthy. That's the main thing.
So would you then just train with low carbohydrate availability, or also like race? How was it in races then?
Just train. But even on days, it wasn't. I mean, on real intense days, it kind of say, you have to get some carbs in the system here, and especially when I was on training camp. Training camps are like, they're just pretty intense. But then, racing would never be. I was saying that, obviously racing, he'd just say, you got to fuel yourself, get, make sure you're getting plenty carbs down. Yeah. But I remember some days it'd be like, make sure you only eat like really low carb through travel, like just only eat protein while you're traveling, and then, wait to start loading your carbs till like the lunch the day before your race and stuff. So really trying to avoid, obviously, I don't know, just wanted to control all of that. So I remember the first race of the year was Almeria in 2021. And my final weigh-in that I did with Leo in the days before, it was like, that's like 70, I think it must have been like 78, 79 kilos, and then ate normally and carved up for the race. And then morning of the race, I was like 84, 85, and my head just exploded. I was like, what? But obviously before I'd been like, so like there's no carbs to hold any water in my system. I was like, obviously must have been like, dehydrated, just like basically like a boxer for a fight, really just trying to get down to fighting weight. So I was just like, oh, how the hell can I put on like 5-6 kilos in 2 days? But makes sense now in that what I was doing before, I was just not, but I don't know, my body was just not okay. So
and seeing that on the scales cracks you mentally a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So I've got to do
as soon as we went uphill, I was like, mind blown. It was in my head, like, so it was daft really. Whereas if I'd have maybe tried to be more consistent, like I was at Wiggins and raced at 80 or, even like 81, 82, but been happy with that and fueled my training for performance, I'd have probably been in a much better state in that race. So, hindsight.
So like this equation, watts per kilo, you either increase the watts or you decrease the kilos to get this number higher. Do you feel like in your World Tour days, you were more focused on getting the kilos down rather than watts up, and in Wiggins days, you were increasing the watts and keeping the weight constant?
Yeah, 100%. Like my numbers when I was at World Tour in terms of what I was putting out wattage was nowhere near what I used to do it when I was at Wiggins. I was so my engine was just awful really. It was just, like I say, I keep saying flat, Like that's what it felt like. I always felt at Wiggins I could really lift it and like be, really powerful over anything from obviously a sprint to like 10 minutes, 20 minutes. But like in that threshold of like sprint to like 5-minute power, was where I kind of excelled. Whereas, when I was at Movistar, it was, I could lift it I could do a decent sprint, because that's just genetic. You've always got that, haven't you? But then in terms of like my minute power, my 5-minute power never got anywhere near what I was doing at Wiggins. And I was like trying to be lighter than I ever was at Wiggins as well. Which ended up, I was 9 times out of 10 would have that, like I just described, it would, tip the balance, so come to race day and actually be heavier than I would have been, in those Wiggins days as well. So it really just didn't, the maths wasn't coming together.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Stuck in third gear and the same weight, if not heavier anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah,
it sounds like you kind of realised that fairly early on in the journey, really. But I guess the coaches and when they're selecting the teams or whatever, I guess they must have been aware of the numbers you were doing at Wiggins and what you were doing then. They didn't think.
Yeah, I think
something's going wrong. Yeah,
I think the thing with I was lucky in that the teams I rode for till I turned pro never really stressed about numbers. So, and my best numbers were always race day. I could produce decent power in a ramp test, but nothing near what I could do in a race. I could, I could train quite well, and again in test days produce half decent numbers. But when I got a race number on my back, it was just a different beast. I had that. I could always really pull something special out. But obviously, if you've not got the foundations of everything else in place to be able to do that, you can't really show that. Which just never really happened at Movistar, because obviously I was changing what I knew I could do and really kind of selling myself short, really, but just to try keep them happy otherwise. So because maybe if I'd have, kind of taken the grief of not having good numbers in training in test days and all that, but then shown them race day what I was capable of, that might have changed things. But obviously you can't, it takes some serious balls to do that as a neo pro, and I just never really went for it. So yeah,
I mean, you'd think they'd be happy with that way round, getting the results in the races is what counts at the end of the day. But I guess you've got to be selected for the races and you've got to show what you can do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just there's a whole host of mistakes, really. But I learned a lot about myself in those years. So still had some amazing experiences, traveling the world, made some great friends, my teammates, and some of the DSs are really great guys. So, as much as it didn't come together performance wise, it was still a cool time, those 2 years.
So, like, if you were to give advice to like young riders, for instance, I get asked a lot, like, what is my goal? What my goal weight should be? They keep asking, like, oh, this is my height. I don't know, 176 centimeters. What should be my body weight? And I keep saying it's very individual. And they want a number, and I don't want to give them a number because I think it's down to each and every individual. So, we have some advice. How would you answer this question?
Yeah, I think that's that. It's so hard because I wanted a number. I was exactly that person. I wanted to know the perfect sweet spot that I would perform at. And I guess all athletes are not all athletes, but a lot of the athletes are going to want that just so they've got that peace of mind. But I think if I could go back, I would be more worried about am I fueling? If I could string together 3 months of training where I really feel like I fueled every session really well, and I've not had any moments where I've felt like I've overeaten or I've undereaten, and then I'm obviously, I feel like, you know, I'm in good shape, and I guess if you get a race in there as well where you feel like you've performed as well, if you could look at that, if you know that time and see, maybe monitor what weight you kind of fluctuate, how much weight you fluctuate naturally. It's obviously not, I mean, some people are the same weight every day, aren't they? But I know now, looking back, and I think a lot of bigger riders probably have the same, where they might, if you could, I think, probably find like a weight kind of, you know, like parameters of like, I don't know, 2, maybe even 3 kilos that you kind of can fluctuate between week on week. Because obviously, you know, even if you weigh yourself once a week, if you've had a hard day the day before or a rest day the day before, you weigh yourself, it's you're going to weigh different things, aren't you? So I think the best thing to do would be set some parameters, and as long as you don't go outside, you know, over that or under that, you know, be happy and not beat yourself up. Because I used to, you know, set and aim for a weight, and if I was, you know, I'd get on the scales nervous, thinking, oh, am I going to be over it? Am I under it? And if I was like 0.1 of a kilo under it, or over it, I'd be stressed. I'd be like, what the hell's going on here? So definitely trying to avoid any situation where you end up stressing about it that much. I think the best way is to probably find a sweet spot where it's of like I say, I don't know if you'd agree, Tim, like a 2 or 3 kilos to be able to. It sounds like a lot for maybe like a lighter guy, but someone who's racing kind of like 78, 79 plus, is, I think those 2 kilos aren't going to make a massive difference, you know, race day. And obviously you can lose that in a race anyway, can't you? Through, you know, by the time from like race start to race finish. I think that'd be my advice. I'm obviously not an expert, but looking back, that would have been the best way for me to be able to deal with it. Because I was fluctuating that much, to be able to bring that fluctuation down from 5, 6, 7 kilos, you know, in a week to, you know, 1 or 2, would have been a much healthier way to perform and to, you know, to live, really.
Because that it kind of makes sense, like once you like established your performance. But like before that, like I usually say, and like let me know if you would agree. I usually say that if person is still improving in absolute watts and then watts per kilo as well, this is the time when you just need to fuel your for performance and for improvements. And only once you kind of are done with improving like VO2 max and all those parameters, when you just can't, because that's basically your genetics limiter, then you can start experimenting a bit with body weight to see if like a reduction of 1 to 2 kilos or 3 perhaps can bring that marginal gain, let's say. But otherwise it would be like trying to find something that's sustainable so that you don't have these massive fluctuations over time.
So I think that's probably where I would always go wrong as well. I'd come out of off season, obviously I had some time off, I've had 4 weeks off, say, or whatever, and in that time I've gone from being done a season, so I'm like absolutely ravenous because I've been under fuel all season, so, you know, pile weight on, and then from the off I'm like under fueling, trying to lose weight, but then trying to make performance gains as well. It just doesn't make sense that at all, does it? So I think, like you say, you know, get the performance right first, you know, get the fueling right. So, you know, you finish, say, a big day, you finish it not feeling hungry, you know, you're not absolutely ravenous because you've fueled your ride, you know, you've had a good breakfast or whatever before, you've eaten, you know, sufficient carbs through the ride, whether that be, you know, whatever body weight you are, you know, whatever per, you know, gram per kilogram that is for each hour. Find what works, and then find, you know, get to a point where you're not waking up on a rest day absolutely starving. I think if you can do that, you know, you're in a good place, you know, you've you've not underfueled. And then if your weight's then stabilizing as well, you know that, right, you can make a very small change, which, you know, over 4 or 5 weeks you'll see a change on the scales or on the your watts per kilo. Because the reality is, as you guys know, it's a lot of cycle performance does come down to, you know, your numbers. But, you know, isn't shown is that like grit that each rider has, you know, like, you know, for me, I knew that I could always, as I said, pull something out of the bag on race day for, you know, I was really super motivated. So again, which is hard to be motivated if you're under fuel. So if you can get there in a healthy spot, even if you're carrying that extra kilo or whatever, it's not the end of the world. And as long as, you know, if you really want to be able to suffer, you have to be in a good place in terms of like what you've been putting in your body and well, health wise as well, obviously.
Yeah, I think like maybe it's difficult for a pro in a way because you've got such a short amount of time without any racing, haven't you? Like you say, you've maybe got that 4 weeks off, but then you've not got a huge amount of training time before you start racing again. But generally, such a big fluctuation in weight would be like a huge sign something's going wrong.
I think I used to see stuff like split the season up into like too many different periods. So I'd be like, classic season, need to be on it, and then I'd be like, rest, and then it'd be like, right, there's some nice one-day races coming up, or there's, you know, there might be a prospect of some, you know, good stage races. Get back on it, set yourself up well for the rest of the year, maybe look at getting selected for world champs. So I really put a lot of high pressure on it, on these little periods. So then when it came to like a rest period or the off season, I just like go off the rails basically in terms of what I was eating. You know, I just wouldn't care that I was piling on 10, 15 kilos. It'd be like, oh, it's fine, I'll lose that when I get back to it. When maybe if someone early on in my career said like, you've got to make a lifestyle change here, you know, you've got to really look at, you know, each day has a knock-on effect. So, you know, if you can string together, say, you know, instead of going into that off season thinking, right, I'm going to just relax and eat what I want, and you know, and then I'll deal with it when I get back to training. Maybe in that time, could have been like, right, maybe, you know, while you're off the bike, it'd be easier to eat less because you're not going to be starving all the time from your training. You know, make some small changes there, set yourself up well for when you do start training. And then in that, as I say, make it more of a lifestyle choice where, you know, you're just trying to avoid those crashes and dips in terms of you just making sure that the balance is right in terms of what you're putting in the system. Like, I think those years of being pro and in all my career, really, I just remember just being starving all the time. At any moment, I could just nail like a massive, you know, I could just nail sweets, chocolate, and all that. But now I'm like, I've stopped. Obviously, I don't hardly ride my bike anymore, but I go to the gym and stuff. But like, I don't really get that hungry anymore, and I don't have a sweet tooth anymore. But so obviously, like those years, I was just spent a lot of those time like underfed, and just obviously my body was
body telling you,
begging me to eat something sweet, you know. So if you can find a balance where, obviously that's always going to be a thing. If you're an endurance athlete, you're always going to be, you know, a little bit hungry, but finding that balance of being able to do it consistently day in, day out. So then, like you said, Tim, you can make the slight adjustments rather than making, you know, 3 months worth of really intense adjustments. It would definitely lead to a much more sustainable performance and much more sustainable career, all being well.
Yeah, I mean, I think with every aspect of training, consistency is the key thing, really, and that extends to nutrition, really, and a consistent quality nutrition is going to support your training and give you the adaptations you want at the end of the day, isn't it? Try not to fall for those sort of quick fixes. Oh, I can lose 5 kilos and
that's the thing. I think
that's simple.
That's it. And so most people, it's a no-brainer. But from my experience, a lot, generally like the bigger riders, like stockier built riders have a harder time, dealing with that. So yeah, but the better if they can try to be more consistent. Like I think perfect example is Fabio Jakobsen. I was teammates with him at Seg, and I remember at the time, like I couldn't believe how much he ate. But he knew, like on our big days training, we used to do training camps in Greece with Vasilis Anastopoulos, quick step coach.
Yeah.
And we'd do these mad rides, and they were good fun. Vasi was great with nutrition; he'd tell you to fuel yourself, but at the same time, he was always on it for me and Fabio. Like, make sure you don't eat too much on that rest day, that type of thing, because we were both like stocky riders. And Fabio was always, I just thought he was Dutch, but actually it's just his personality. He'd basically tell Vasi to fuck off. Like he'd be, like, I've done 6 hours today. If I want to have 3 plates of food because I'm that hungry, I'm going to eat it. So rather than, going to bed hungry and waking up wanting to eat, all the croissants at breakfast. Yeah. So someone like that, I wish I'd have kind of taken better mental note and kind of really backed myself and backed what I know my body is crying out for. So yeah, you got to listen to your own system at the end of the day.
Yeah, in the world of watts per kilo being everything, your body's got its own homeostatic system that's been developed over how many hundreds of thousands of years. That's probably does a pretty good job of telling you what you need a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But it's the fine tuning, isn't it? That's probably the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And I mean, all the good coaches and all the good riders I've ever worked with, had anything to do with, have always said exactly that. So, and it is true. You just gotta. It's hard to not look at other people and think, oh well, if they're eating that much, actually that much. You really got to find what works for you, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely.
So slowly wrap up. What would be advice to young riders? What would be the thing that you wouldn't do again as a rider that you would change in your career and you don't want others to repeat the same mistake?
I think the main one being super fasted rides was looking back for me, for my rider type was just detrimental. It had such a knock-on effect. It's not a sustainable. If you don't do it, even if you do it right, which I kind of got the grasp of later, in my years at Movistar, and then last year when I was still racing. Even when you do it right, it still has a knock-on effect. So I think if your struggle with your weight fluctuation, I think staying away from that type of thing, as much as the performance gains can be beneficial, it's not as beneficial as being consistent with your weight and with your lifestyle. So I wish because I started doing that so early on, even when I was junior, I started doing fasted rides, and I just think it must have an effect on your metabolism as you're growing up. It's got to, because I just think, for young riders, stay away from that for as long as you can until you're wanting to make very small adjustments, like you said, Tim. Get the 80% right first, or even more, the 99% right, and then those little things like a little fasted ride or whatever for those people who are really consistent with their weight, that might be beneficial. But if you're struggling to get your weight down and find a sweet spot that you can remain consistent with, I'd stay away from anything like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more also,
Yeah.
from the nutritionist perspective.
Yeah.
And I feel like there is like a big difference between like professional riders doing like 5, 6, 7 hours on the bike every single day and starting those rides fasted, as compared to like general public that would do like 1 hour fasted. Like it's a completely different type of exercise. Perhaps you can survive easily like 1 hour, but when it comes to like 2, 3, 4 hours, that's basically just like a shot into the head. From the like metabolism perspective. Absolutely. And it's just like, doesn't work. And this is really, I think, a really important message for the riders and people to remember, because like they keep obsessing about this, let's maximize fat oxidation rate. Yeah, but it's just then hinders the adaptations, hinders the recovery, and you just can't ride the next few days normally.
Absolutely.
You might have great fat oxidation when you were doing those rides, but like you say, you couldn't do that effort where it carried.
Exactly. I think, if you can, I really only started realizing how good you can feel on the bike if you hit, if you really hit those numbers, those carb numbers right. If you're getting your pre-fueling spot on, if you're hitting your intra fueling as well, if you can really start to push it up to your high numbers, your 110, 120 grams of carbs an hour, it feels like cheating. You feel that good, doesn't it? So, like, I wish that if I could have done that from when I was junior through my under 23 career, I know that I'd have been even better rider than I was. If you can start to push that rather than be worried about the other end, trying to ride for as long as you can fasted. I'd have seen way better gains than in terms of like what I was able to do, numbers I was able to produce, as opposed to what the scale was saying. I think my advice would be carb up as much as you can. And stay away from fasted stuff until you've found a really, really, a really good sweet spot that you've been consistent with for a couple of years, and you're looking at making those like very small adjustments.
I can tell Tim's really happy with that last couple of sentences.
What is it? What does Durian Rider say?
Gab the fat gap.
It's cliche, obviously, but I think it's all coming to light now, isn't it? Obviously, I don't know if you saw Theo Geoghegan put something out with did any else work with Super Saiyan or something? I don't know, but he did a thing about how, it was just a thing on Instagram I saw about how, basically what I just said, like how much better he felt once he really got to terms with, how much carbs you actually need to eat and what you can actually eat to be able to fuel your performance, and how much gains you see doing that, as opposed to, the old traditional way of, start going out pre-breakfast, that type of thing. So it's good to see that that's getting put out there for younger riders who have all these kids that are being influenced that want to be pro bike riders. They're seeing that rather than seeing someone on a Tour de France rest day having, eggs and avocado for breakfast.
I think that trickles down to everyone as well. Like people at a much lower level who I coach with, and look at what they're eating and suggest they try a little bit more. They often come back and say, "Wow, that session, that felt a lot easier than it has done before," or I could go better for longer than before. It's something a habit you get into that maybe you don't realise until someone tells you to change it, and you do, and you see those results for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say I just hope, I think the way the sport is going, obviously it's getting younger and younger. Guys turning pro out of junior and all that, which I think it's the way any sport goes, isn't it? But I just hope that I think it seems like more and more up-to-date science is being put out there, and people are actually not many people are making the mistakes that I made, thanks to the likes of like you guys. So yeah, I hope that continues, and we can start to see more kind of, well, I think obviously the kind of boundaries of performance are just going to continue to get pushed due to this new science and stuff, which is great to see. Really, it's good to see normal looking blokes or bigger looking riders actually at the front end of bike racing now, rather than like real skinny guys that you got no muscle on their arms or anything. I think it's why it's great to see guys like like Remco and Podlogar, and even like Ben Healy recently. They're normal looking blokes out there. They're not like super thin. They're healthy looking lads out there, which is, I think it's a great image for cycling. So hope that continues, and the world of cycling will be a healthier place.
For sure. Hopefully this has been useful for some people, and like I say, people don't repeat those mistakes that you've made. And I'm sure many people have, and many people still will do, but hopefully do less after this. Yeah,
that's fair. And when I was pro, once I realised I was a bigger rider, I was like, it did motivate me. I wanted to be that guy that was always like, how the hell is he still here? After like really hilly day, which I was managing to do while I was at Wiggins, but kind of just went the wrong way about things when I was actually at World Tour. So yeah, I definitely believe that had I done everything right, I could have probably still be racing at that level. But that's hindsight, isn't it? Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, this was really, really good. Really, like, I think are really good lessons for like younger riders, and even for me, like, to kind of appreciate like what we are doing, like supporting like the carbs. Opportunities, even from the applied perspective. So thanks for really appreciate it.
No, it's good. Yeah, it's been nice to share my story with you guys.
No, it's been brilliant. Thanks a lot, Gabs.
Nice one.